We've all faced moments where life felt too heavy, moments where the weight of what's in front of us made us question everything behind us. Maybe you've been there, staring at a wall, a diagnosis, a heartbreak, a failure, wondering, how do I keep going? See, the thing about challenges is that they're not optional. You don't get to opt out of pain, of loss, of disappointment. But you do get to choose what you do with it. And that choice begins with something so simple, so often overlooked, and yet so unbelievably powerful, your why. That's the first unbreakable rule for overcoming life's challenges. You have to start with why. Because when you know your why, when you're connected to something bigger than yourself, you can endure almost anything. People think strength comes from toughness. But real strength comes from clarity, and clarity starts with purpose. Let me tell you a story. A friend of mine, Sarah, is a pediatric nurse. She's spent the last decade working in children's oncology. That's a hard job. Every day she walks into rooms where children fight battles their bodies shouldn't even know exist. She's seen children pass away. She's watched parents break. She's held tiny hands through chemo, sat on cold hospital floors in the middle of the night, and delivered news that no one ever wants to say out loud. And yet every single morning, Sarah shows up with a light in her eyes, with hope in her voice. I once asked her, how do you do this? How do you not break? She looked at me calm and steady and said, because I know why I'm here. I'm not here to stop the storm. I'm here to be a lighthouse. I can't fix everything, but I can help them feel safe, even if just for a little while. That's the power of knowing your why. It doesn't erase the pain. It doesn't make things easy, but it gives meaning to the struggle. And meaning is what makes us resilient. So I ask you, what's your why? What makes you get back up when everything in you wants to stay down? What pulls you forward when the future is foggy? Because if you don't know your why, the hard days will bury you. But if you do, if you're rooted in purpose, the hard days will build you. Think about it like this. If you're lost at sea, you can paddle all you want. But if you don't know where land is, you're just burning energy. When you know your destination, every stroke matters, even the smallest ones. So when you face adversity, you don't need to be perfect. You don't need to have all the answers. You just need to remember why you started. You just need to keep moving. Now let's be honest. This isn't easy. Knowing your why is not a one-time discovery. It's not a slogan. It's not something you slap on a vision board and forget about. It's a practice, a commitment, a daily return to something deeper. You're going to have days when your why feels distant, when the noise is louder than the purpose, when fear is louder than conviction. That's okay. Those are the days you come back to the basics. You pause, you reflect, you ask yourself, who am I doing this for? What kind of legacy do I want to leave? Who gets better because I don't give up? Let me tell you what I've learned from leaders, from athletes, from parents, from survivors, from people who've been to the edge and made it back. The ones who overcome the hardest things, they're not superhuman. They're not fearless. They're not always the smartest or the strongest. They're the ones who refuse to lose sight of their why. They let it guide them through the fog. They let it be their anchor when everything else feels unstable. And when that why is strong enough, when it's rooted in service, in impact, in something greater than ego, it becomes a force you can lean on, a reason to keep going when nothing else makes sense. Because here's the truth, storms will come. You can't outrun pain. You can't control every loss, but you can control your response. You can decide what story you want to write in the middle of the mess. You can choose purpose over panic. I believe the world doesn't just need people who survive hard things. The world needs people who rise because of them. People who look at adversity not as the end, but as a new beginning. And that kind of mindset, that resilience, doesn't come from just being strong. It comes from being anchored. Your why is your anchor. So maybe your why is your family. Maybe it's a dream you've carried since childhood. Maybe it's a promise you made to someone who's no longer here. Or maybe, just maybe, it's the belief that your life, as messy as it might be, still matters, still has value, still has something to offer the world. Whatever it is, find it. And when life knocks you down, and it will, go back to it again and again and again. Because when you start with why, you don't just survive challenges, you transcend them. And that is how you begin to overcome. We live in a world that glorifies perfection. Scroll through social media and you'll see the highlight reels, the polished moments, the filtered wins, the curated versions of life that make it seem like everyone else has it all figured out. But here's the truth that nobody posts. Perfection is an illusion, and chasing it, that's the fastest way to burn out. Progress, not perfection. That's the unbreakable rule. You see, overcoming life's challenges isn't about doing everything right. It's not about never making mistakes. It's not about having a flawless plan. It's about choosing to move forward. One small step at a time, even when the path is messy. Especially when the path is messy. Let me share a story. There was a man named James who decided, after years of working a desk job, to run his first marathon. He wasn't a runner. In fact, he could barely make it up a flight of stairs without getting winded. But he set a goal. Not to win, not to beat anyone, but just to finish. He started training. Day one, he couldn't make it a mile. His lungs burned, his legs gave out, and his self-doubt screamed louder than anything else. But the next day, he laced up again. He ran half a mile farther, then a little more, and then a little more. 8 months later, he crossed the finish line of his first marathon. Not fast, not effortlessly, but he crossed it. And when I asked him how he kept going when it felt impossible, he said, I stopped trying to be perfect and just focused on being better than yesterday. That's it. That's the mindset, because perfection will paralyze you. It convinces you that if you can't do it flawlessly, it's not worth doing at all. But progress frees you. It gives you permission to be human. It gives you room to grow. And here's what happens when you fall in love with progress. The fear of failure loses its grip on you. You stop worrying about being wrong and start focusing on getting it right eventually. You stop measuring yourself by other people's timelines and start building your own. That's where confidence begins. We've been conditioned to believe that success has to look a certain way, clean, linear, fast. But real growth is chaotic. It's full of false starts, painful lessons, and invisible victories. You might be climbing a mountain right now and feeling like you're getting nowhere. But just because progress is slow doesn't mean it's not happening. In fact, the slowest steps are often the most important. Think about a seed buried in the soil. You don't see what's happening under the surface, but it's growing roots, it's preparing, and one day it breaks through, not because of a sudden surge of energy, but because of quiet, consistent progress. And that's what we're doing when we face challenges. We're growing roots. We're building something beneath the surface that no one else can see. And that work matters. It's not flashy. It's not perfect. But it's powerful. And yet we keep getting caught in this trap. The trap of comparison. We look at someone else's chapter 20 and wonder why we're still on chapter 3. But their journey isn't your journey. Their progress isn't your progress. You're not here to win someone else's race. You're here to run your own. And maybe your race is uphill. Maybe your race is slower. That's okay. What matters is that you keep running. When we stop chasing perfection, we start creating space for real change. We allow ourselves to try new things, to ask for help, to fall down and get back up. That's how resilience is built. Not through being flawless, but through being willing to start, even when you're scared, even when you're unsure. There is something incredibly brave about being a beginner. It takes courage to be the person who's willing to say, I'm not there yet, but I'm on my way. That mindset, that humility, that's what opens doors, that's what creates momentum, and momentum is the secret weapon. Because when you take one step, even the tiniest step, something shifts. You build belief, you build evidence, you prove to yourself that progress is possible. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. Progress builds trust with yourself. It's how you become someone you can count on. And that relationship, the one you have with yourself, that's the foundation for every other success in your life. You don't need to wait until everything's perfect to begin. You just need to begin. Start messy, start scared, start unsure. But start. Because the truth is, you don't become confident by waiting to feel ready. You become confident by doing the thing again and again until readiness catches up. And yes, some days you'll feel like you've moved backward. You'll fall short. You'll make mistakes. But those days aren't failures. They're part of the rhythm. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. That's still progress. If you want to overcome life's challenges, let go of the need to do it perfectly. Perfection is a moving target. Progress is a direction. So today, ask yourself, what's one small thing I can do that moves me forward? What's one action that honors where I am, but also where I want to be? Because the people who make it through the hardest things, they're not perfect. They're not superhuman. They're just relentless. They're committed to showing up, to learning, to growing, even when no one is watching, even when it's hard. So stop waiting to feel ready. Stop waiting for perfect. Start moving. Because every step, no matter how small, is proof that you're still in the fight. And that is what overcoming looks like. There's something no one tells you when you begin the journey of trying to become your best self. No one says, this is going to hurt. Not just once, not just in the beginning, but over and over again, and not because you're doing it wrong, but because you're doing it right. Growth and comfort do not coexist. In fact, the moment things begin to feel too easy, too predictable, too safe, you're probably no longer growing. Discomfort is not a punishment, it's a signal. It's a sign that you're stretching into new territory, and that matters more than almost anything else. Let me tell you about a man I met who spent 20 years in a corporate role. He had the title, the paycheck, the corner office, the markers of success. But he also had this gnawing sense that something was missing. He told me, I felt like I was winning a game I didn't want to be playing. So he left. At age 48, he walked away from the predictable path to start a small nonprofit for at-risk youth. And let me be honest with you, the first 2 years were brutal. The money dried up, the structure disappeared. Every day he woke up in fear, questioning himself. He was exhausted, uncomfortable, in over his head. But 5 years later, that same man looked me in the eye and said, I've never been more alive. Every day I'm terrified, but every day I know I'm doing something that matters. That's what discomfort gives you, aliveness. Not the fake kind you get from distractions, not the short burst you get from dopamine hits. I'm talking about the kind of aliveness that comes from doing hard things that align with your value. The kind of aliveness that makes you proud when no one's watching. Here's what we often misunderstand. We think discomfort means we're on the wrong path. But often, it's the opposite. Discomfort means you're evolving. It means you're stepping into a new version of yourself that doesn't quite fit yet, like a pair of shoes just a little too tight. But give it time. Break them in. Let them stretch. Think about the gym. What builds muscle? Resistance. You lift weights not because it's easy, but because the struggle creates strength. It tears the muscle just enough to rebuild it, stronger than before. Growth requires resistance. There's no shortcut around that. So why do we run from discomfort in other areas of life? Why do we avoid difficult conversations, hard choices, new challenges? Because we're wired for safety. Our brains are designed to keep us alive, not to help us thrive. But the best things in life aren't found in the safe zone. They're found just beyond it. That's the edge. The edge is uncomfortable, but it's also where all the possibility lives. When you face a challenge, you have two options. You can retreat into comfort, the old patterns, the familiar excuses, or you can lean into the discomfort and trust that there's something valuable on the other side. That choice is what separates those who grow from those who stay stuck. And listen, I get it. Discomfort isn't fun. It's not glamorous. Sometimes it looks like sitting alone in your thoughts and confronting hard truths. Sometimes it's waking up early to do the work no one will see. Sometimes it's admitting you don't know the answer and asking for help. But every time you choose discomfort with intention, you get a little stronger. You become someone who doesn't just react to life, you shape it. I once worked with a young entrepreneur who was terrified of public speaking, but he had a message that mattered. His fear nearly kept him silent, but he made a deal with himself. He would say yes to every speaking opportunity that came his way for 1 year, no matter how uncomfortable it felt. He bombed the first talk. He froze during the second, but by the 10th, he was starting to find his rhythm, and by the end of the year, he was giving keynotes with confidence. Not because the fear disappeared, but because he learned to move forward with it. Discomfort didn't break him, it built him. And a sign that we all need to hear, the presence of fear, of tension, of unease, it doesn't mean you're not ready. It means you're human. It means you're growing. So what if we stopped seeing discomfort as a sign to stop and started seeing it as a sign to keep going? What if we reframed the struggle as evidence that we're becoming more than who we were yesterday? The truth is you cannot grow and remain the same. Transformation requires tension. And that tension will stretch you, challenge you, sometimes even break you, but only so something stronger can emerge. It's like the process of forging steel. Extreme heat, relentless pressure, but the result, strength, resilience, endurance. The same is true for people. The people you admire most, the ones who lead with clarity, who live with purpose, who make a difference, they didn't get there by staying comfortable. They got there by stepping into discomfort again and again and trusting that something better was being born in the process. So if life feels hard right now, if you're overwhelmed, uncertain, scared, don't rush to escape it. Sit with it. Learn from it. Let it do its work. You're not being punished, you're being prepared. And one day, not too far from now, you'll look back and realize that season of discomfort, that moment of uncertainty, it was the turning point. Because discomfort is not the enemy, it's the invitation. The question is, will you accept it? No one does it alone. We like to talk about strength as if it's a solo pursuit, the late nights, the hustle, the lone hero rising against the odds. But the truth is, behind every strong person is a circle of people who stood beside them when the world felt like it was falling apart. Your circle matters more than you think when life gets hard, and it will. The people around you will either lift you or leave you. They will either build your courage or break your spirit. That's why the fourth unbreakable rule for overcoming life's challenges is this: protect your circle, because your circle is your fortress. Let me tell you about a woman named Dani. She was an elite athlete, a national champion with sponsorships and titles under her belt. But during a routine training session, she tore her ACL. The injury ended her season and nearly ended her career. She told me the pain wasn't just physical. I lost who I thought I was. He went through the weeks that followed. She found herself spiraling. Doubt crept in. Depression followed. But what kept her going wasn't willpower. It wasn't some secret inner strength. It was a friend who showed up at her door every morning, coffee in one hand, silence in the other. He didn't try to fix her. He didn't say much. He just sat with her every day. And slowly, something shifted. That simple, consistent presence reminded her she wasn't alone. It reminded her she was still worth showing up for. That friend, that piece of her circle, helped her heal long before her body did. We underestimate the power of presence. We think we have to say the right thing, do the right thing, have all the answers. But sometimes the most powerful gift you can give someone, or receive, is simply knowing you're not facing the dark alone. That's why you need people in your life who aren't just there for the parties and the promotions, but who are there for the panic attacks, the breakdowns, the late night deaths. People who aren't afraid of your pain. People who don't flinch when things get messy. You see, a fortress isn't just about protection, it's about grounding. When the storms of life hit, your circle becomes the place where you can fall apart without falling away. A place where you're safe but not stuck. Supported but still challenged to grow. And here's the thing. Your circle doesn't have to be big. In fact, it shouldn't be. It's not about how many people are in your life. It's about who's really in your corner. Who's willing to walk through the fire with you. Who shows up without being asked. We live in a time where we're more connected than ever and yet more isolated than ever. We have hundreds, sometimes thousands of followers. But ask yourself this: who could you call at 2 a.m. if everything fell apart? Who would show up, not out of obligation, but because they believe in you? That's your real circle. And those people, they're worth everything. But there's another side to this. Just as important as knowing who's in your circle is knowing who shouldn't be. Because not everyone deserves access to your struggle. Not everyone is healthy for your healing. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is say goodbye to people who keep you small. You are allowed to outgrow relationships. You are allowed to walk away from people who drain your energy, who feed your fear, who keep you locked in patterns that no longer serve the person you're trying to become. There's a quote I love that says, you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So look around. Are your 5 building you up, or are they keeping you where you've always been? Because energy is contagious, mindsets are contagious, belief is contagious. When you surround yourself with people who are growing, who are grounded, who are generous with their hope, you absorb that, you become more courageous simply by being in their presence. And when you're part of a strong circle, you don't just receive support, you offer it. You become someone else's safe place. You get to be the person who listens without judgment, who believes when someone else forgets how, who holds the line when someone else is slipping. That kind of mutual strength is rare, and it's powerful, because together we are always stronger than we are alone. I want you to think about the people in your life who've made you feel seen. The ones who didn't flinch at your tears, the ones who held you accountable because they saw your potential, the ones who didn't just tell you what you wanted to hear, but what you needed to hear. Lovingly, honestly. Those people, that's your foundation. They remind you of who you are when you forget. They believe in your future when you're too tired to keep believing in yourself. They speak truth when your mind is spinning with lies. And in a world that constantly tries to convince you that you have to be everything for everyone, your circle is the place where you can just be, where you don't have to perform, where you're enough exactly as you are. So build your circle with intention. Be slow to open the gates, be even slower to let people stay who don't respect the space. Because this fortress, it's sacred. And when the storms come, and they will, it's what will hold you together. No one climbs the mountain alone, or rebuilds after loss alone. No one survives the hard seasons without help. So if you're struggling right now, don't isolate. Reach out. Let someone in. And if you're doing okay, look around. Someone near you might be silently drowning. Be their circle. Be their anchor. Because this life is hard, but it's not meant to be lived alone. And sometimes the strongest thing you'll ever do is lean on someone else. Pain is inevitable. It's a part of life. No one escapes. No matter how talented you are, how careful, how strong, loss, failure, heartbreak, disappointment, they find us all. But while pain may be universal, the way we respond to it, that's what makes the difference. Because pain without purpose feels like punishment. But pain with purpose, that's transformation. When we give meaning to our struggle, everything changes. It doesn't take the pain away, but it gives it a place. It gives it a reason. It gives us something to reach for when everything else feels like it's falling apart. There's a young woman I once met who had survived a traumatic childhood, abuse, abandonment, instability. For years, she carried the weight of it in silence, thinking it had broken her. But one day, she made a choice. She began sharing her story, not for sympathy, but for service. She started speaking to young girls in foster care, showing them what survival looks like, what strength sounds like. And she told me, when I turned my pain into a purpose, it stopped owning me. That's what this rule is about. It's not about pretending everything happens for a reason, because honestly, sometimes it doesn't. Some things are just unfair. Some things are just hard. But even in those moments, we get to choose, will I be consumed by this, or will I create from it? Purpose gives us a way forward. It's not a light switch you flip. It's a process, really? Okay, a posture, a decision to look your pain in the face and say, you don't get the last word. And let me be clear. Purpose doesn't always look grand. It doesn't always mean starting a nonprofit or launching a movement. Sometimes purpose is quiet. It's waking up one more time than you wanted to give up. It's choosing to be kind when you have every reason not to be. It's deciding that the story doesn't end here. We don't need a perfect plan to find purpose. We just need a reason that's stronger than our excuses. Think of the people who inspire you the most. Chances are they didn't get there through comfort. They got there through pain. but they chose to do something with it. That's what made them resilient, not just surviving, but serving. And that's the key. Purpose always involves someone else. Because when we focus only on ourselves, our pain becomes heavier, it becomes louder. But when we shift our attention outward, when we ask, who can I help because of what I've been through? That's when we begin to heal. There's something powerful that happens when we realize that the very thing that tried to break us is the thing we now use to build someone else. Our pain becomes a bridge, a tool, a source of connection. And connection at its core is what we're all searching for. When you share your purpose, when you live it, you remind others that they're not alone. You remind them that pain is not the end of the story, that something beautiful can still rise from the wreckage. But here's the challenge. Finding purpose doesn't always feel good. In fact, sometimes it hurts more before it heals. Because it means revisiting the things we'd rather forget. It means choosing vulnerability when we'd rather be numb. It means stepping into the fire, not because we want to suffer, but because we know something stronger is waiting on the other side. And that's a brave choice. It's a choice to believe that who you are becoming is more powerful than what you've been through. Of course, it's a choice to believe that pain is not the enemy, it's the invitation. Purpose gives pain a job, it gives it a direction. It allows you to carry it differently. Instead of dragging it like a weight, you begin to wear it like armor. Not the kind that shuts you off from the world, but the kind that reminds you what you've survived. That reminds you what you're capable of, that makes you brave in a world that keeps trying to convince you to play small. Pain isn't weakness, it's proof that you've lived, that you've risked, that you've loved. And if you can turn that pain into purpose, you become unstoppable. Because you stop asking, why me, and start asking, what now? You stop defining yourself by the worst day of your life and start defining yourself by what you did after it. That's the power of purpose. It's not just about achievement, it's about alignment. It's about living in a way that feels connected to who you really are and who you're still becoming. And the beautiful part is this, your purpose doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be clear right away. It just has to be honest. It has to be yours. Start where you are. Start with what you've been through. Start with what breaks your heart or lights your fire. Somewhere in that space, your purpose is waiting. And when you find it, even just a glimpse of it, everything shifts. The pain doesn't vanish, but it stops defining you. It becomes focus. So if you're in the middle of something hard right now, don't rush through it. Don't numb it. Ask yourself, what could this be for? Who could this help someday? What is this shaping in me that comfort never could? And if you're on the other side of something painful, if you've made it through, don't hide that story, share it. Someone out there is living what you've already survived. Be the proof that healing is possible. Be the signpost that says, keep going. There's purpose on the other side. Because in the end, your story, your honest, messy, beautiful story, could be the light that helps someone else find their way. Purpose doesn't make the pain go away, but it does make it worth it.